Hey gang, this is not a reaction, so if you don't want to watch an analysis video, by all means skip. Let's break down this music, shall we? So I love how we start this. Simple, quiet, just the choir. Ooh, open O vowel, oo vowel. And what it does is it creates a sense of space for the singer, and then it looks up at the camera. Shambulya bebe shilaha. Super simple melody, right? Really, really basic, but also there's no vibrato too, so it has this natural quality of a real honesty. I think sometimes vibrato can get in the way, and it can come off as fake or hoity-toity. Definitely something that feels a bit foreign and a bit uncomfortable. So this is a beautiful, warm, rich tone, really. And also something that I really thought about, if I'm understanding this correctly, this is Swahili. And one of the things that's really beautiful about this, and we see it in Baba Yetu as well, is the vowels. And in romantic languages like Italian especially, the vowels lead the singing. Right? The vowels are the most important part of the experience. The vowels are essentially the flow of water, and the consonants are like you putting your hand in front of the water. And in this particular case, I find that this language is so singable. Shambulya bebashi silaha. It's all vowel, which is really, really, I think, quite beautiful and lends itself naturally to singing. So we say, for our homeland we'll shed our last drop of blood. This is when we have the introduction of the motif, the Natlan motif, in my opinion. I hope it is anyway. So what ends up happening is but in the background we have a bit of antagonism. We have dissonance. Listen to this. You hear that? Ooh, whoa. In the background, there's actually a tiny bit of clash, which I think really, really indicates the conflict that will occur in Natlan, or certainly, at least in this particular case, the music. For our homeland, we'll shed our last drop of blood. And that melody is really important. And I think that this is actually, listening to this about 30 times, what I've discovered is I really actually think that everything we've heard in Fontaine was a repercussion from Yu Pengchen leaving. And what we have here now is, the Fontaine melody was quite beautiful, don't get me wrong. The motif that we hear, da 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 da, that's great. But this is really the Hoyo Mix team on its own, and reaching deeply. And if there's one thing that Genshin has always done well, it's pulled from the music of different cultures and aspects of different ethnicities and cultural ideation, and turn that into music and kind of combine them in this sort of global language, even though music isn't necessarily a global language. But in this particular case, I really feel like this music is finding its own sense of place, and setting up this motif that they do here is exceptionally well done. And I think that this motif especially is very heartfelt and honest, and I think it's very poetic, and it symbolizes willingness to fight for one's homeland, and willingness to, understand that this may end in death, and understand that this may be, a difficult battle, and yet we fight, right? And I think that that's really poetic and quite beautiful. And then we come together. And everything comes together as we sort of button that little a cappella section with this essence of being together and coming together. And that's when the choir and the background singers, I should say, also come together with the soloist, and we match in, and then we thrust into the instrumental. Some counter melody. And what a beautiful language. Ushuya wan gaza. Mbingu ninar. I love this. I love the way mbingu. So we have the M before the B, mbingu. But what's really cool is that we use it as a launching off point for bingu. So we go mbingu nadardi. But I also love I just love how the language lends itself so well to the act of singing. Bingu nardadi, or whatever the words are, but it's really powerful. I love that. And also this orchestration here. Now we do get some counter melody with the men there, a different sort of re-emphasis or a recap of what was said prior. But what also is cool here is that the orchestra is actually leading and assisting in the sensation of reminding us that this is a conflict that has been going on for ages, and there's a sense of resoluteness and a sense of like wanting to achieve something because of how calm and stretched out it is, which I really think is quite bold, because what we're essentially doing is stretching out long ideas, and that's the beauty of singing too. Singing is just a prolonged emotion, right? I could say, hello, how are you? And that's just words. But if I say, hello, how are you? That means something different in the way that the pitches go and so on and so forth. So I think that this is very stretched out and beautiful. It could have been fast, and it's the opposite. It's quite nice. So what happens there? That whole time we basically just have this slow crescendo. We have this slow crescendo into, we will wait for you. And the orchestra goes bum ba-da-dum bum 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 bum. And then we arrive at this moment where we all come together. It's really quite powerful. And now we get rhythm focus. Rhythm focus here is big. And the guitar is phenomenal. Beautiful, authentic instrumentation, has a folk element to it. Also, a really powerful motif here has come up now. Has so much incredible heart. And I also love that we are essentially reintroducing. So we've had multiple different motifs in this whole thing. So the first half was this, and then this one is and it's up to you to interpret what that means, what that motif means to you. For me, it's like a reminiscence of beauty, or a reflection on the meaning of life and how beautiful it is to exist, right? Or it's not joyous, but there's a real sense of like responsibility for the world and for people. And I think that comes across to me really well. I'd love to know in the comments what you think this motif means. It's kind of funny because sometimes I think people get confused, because the reality is all of this is up for interpretation. There's no such thing as right or wrong when it comes to music. Now, you may say, well, the context, and I really honestly don't care about that, because what's awesome about this particular performance is that we don't know the context. Now, we may find out context later on, but what actually matters is the interpretation of how it feels. And some folks might say, well, that's a negative because, it's all based on like what your feeling is. But since when has music ever meant anything more than feeling? Music and feeling and emotion are the basis of life itself, in my humble opinion. And I believe that music allows us to express ourselves, and no one can say whether an emotion or an expression is right or wrong. What matters is how you feel about it. That is the key to music, and that's the key to understanding it. You can't get caught up in I think context is always going to be important, right? We need context. especially in interactive media like video games. However, I would challenge you to actively listen to each individual section of this piece on your own. Think about what each individual section means, what that flute represents, what the singer represents to you. And then when you do hear it in context, boy, you're going to have so much more to say and to think and to feel about it, having experienced what the complete package is, right? But it's important for us as active listeners to experience and explore what active listening means to us and how we feel about music when we hear it. It's so vitally important, and I do encourage you to do that, to listen to this piece like we are together right now. Do it on your own time. Think about what it makes you feel. Think about how you connect to it. And then when you hear it in context later on, be like, wow, okay, so what I felt was, this, and this ended up being the thing that was in the game, or not, and it doesn't really matter. Anyway. That's cool. So when he talks about death, we actually go down in the register, and we sort of press into it almost, which is really neat. Is your courage unwavering? We go up, and then we go Vada, beyond doubt. My courage is unwavering, and this is when we really get into this sense of processing potential death and deciding, no, I will face what the challenges ahead and move through them, because that's the only way to move through challenges. Bit of a key change in here. Beautiful melismatic writing in the flutes there. Nice harmony in there as well. Get some really nice unison movements and call and response. Nice crescendi in there as well. But this flute, this beautiful instrument is really leading this. It's so satisfying. Again, we have a recap on that motif. That motif that we initiated a minute ago is still here. And this is beautiful. This is really thinking, humming and thinking about what's coming and where we've gone and where we're going and what life means to us and how we can express ourselves and what it means to understand the complexity of life and how hard challenges can be, and yet we can still rise above them. Humming is such an evocative way to do that. Humming is something that we hear all the way back in Puccini's time period with Madama Butterfly and the humming chorus, and how emphatically important humming is to showcasing a scene or expressing a mood. It's a real simple, powerful human thing that we can do that allows us to more connect with the ethos of life, I guess, if that makes sense. Humming is incredibly powerful, and I think it's also interesting because humming it naturally is more pulled back. When we sing to our children, sometimes we hum, sometimes we don't use words. Humming is such a natural thing to do. It's really, really just beautiful. Nice open-throated hum there. Now we're doubling with the horns. Again, this language, such a singable language. Nice unison strength there. Unison, everything, everyone's singing the same notes. With some bass, heavy emphasis there, doubled with the bass brass. Nice. Gorgeous string movement in there. big crescendo into that. I mean, it's a gorgeous piece. I think this actually may be one of my favorite pieces I've heard from Genshin, certainly in the last year, I'd say, but definitely something, it's really, really, really profound. I also really like how essentially it's a national anthem. It's a national anthem for Natlan. It's also just a really powerful piece about what it means to be alive and what it means to move through difficult challenges. And I do think that this will play at pivotal moments in Natlan's story. I also think that in general, it's just a beautiful use of motif, and it's a really outstandingly done piece. I think it's quite nice. It's really quite nice. It's actually simple in its motivic use. It doesn't spin around on the motif like 5 to 10 times, and there's no like variations with different instruments per se. It's not really needed. But what's really cool is that we have two different motivic ideas. Da 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 da. We have that, and then on the flip side we have, you know, what we heard at the beginning, and one of the key things and one of the most important things about melody is that it imprints itself onto you. A melody, an earworm, can really do lasting, powerful, beautiful damage on a person. It imprints itself in us. We hum it when we're at the grocery store. We hum it while taking a shower. You know, like a motif that's really catchy makes all the difference. And it's a big difference between something that's really nice and ambient music, which is what I feel we had predominantly in Fontaine, versus this, which is really pronounced and rooting of an entity, and rooting of a motivic and musical idea, which then lasts forever in theory. Really, really beautiful first piece. And Photon of Fluctuation that's coming up next, this modification of that, I have to say, I don't really like Photon of Fluctuation. After listening to all these different variations, I think this variation may be my favorite, but maybe that's recency bias. But in general, I find that Photon of Fluctuation is a bit too peppy. And while I know that it's one of 3 battle themes usually, I much prefer listening to the new battle themes when they come out, because I find those to be generally more interesting, more evocative, more appropriate for the region. That said, Photon of Fluctuation in this particular area of Natlan is quite interesting, and we'll get into it. But I was thinking about this in the car, and I was like, well, why don't I like Photon of Fluctuation? And I think ultimately, I don't feel like the stakes are really high while I'm playing it. And in fact, some parts of it actually kind of annoy me now after listening to it for so many iterations of it. I find that this piece is too bright for me, and I want something a little bit more serious, a little bit more heavy, a little bit more Fatui Harbinger. But you know, I think it's also good to have options, obviously, and not everything is a big deal. Which I suppose if you're your regular casual battle, well, we don't necessarily need that. In terms of a piece of composition, it's obviously well produced, it's well made, it's great uniformity, great dynamic range, great use of instrumentation. But this particular one is quite good, actually. I like that the sort of the banjo is actually the dominant instrument, and I also appreciate all the folk instruments that are being used. And obviously the choral part really stands out, but also the mallet instrument is quite nice as well. A lot of these instruments I've never heard or seen before. I love that. I do like the trading off of instruments here, especially. Like, I like that it starts with this instrument, then it goes into the flutes. Now it's in the mallet instruments. And I really like that the flute there, that folk flute, really has the focus there for a second. Now it's in the strings. So we're moving around, and it's really nice to have that motivic movement in different instruments. This is great. Love seeing how they're using the instrumentation and the bowing there. And this is where we actually deviate from it, which is quite nice. So we have it in this instrument, and then we move into the trumpet, while the instrumentation, the orchestration underneath is just sort of re-emphasizing supporting these solo instruments. French horn takes it a little bit. And now this is really great. think this is the first time we've actually had vocals in this Photon of Fluctuation, and this is really a standout for me. And then the soloist comes in too, after we get this steel drum. Great stuff. Fantastic vocalism. Really rooted in speech and in text. Really nice doubling in here. Again, extremely catchy, extremely motivically centered. Nice build here. A false, fake ending. Psych. Bit of a re-emphasis. I love that we still have the banjo in the background too. Key change. Talking about the rising of a phoenix. Really terrific text. Nice recap there of that. Utu Kufu glorious as we scale up. Grow and build. Rise, hero, rise like the dawn. And yeah, actually goosebumps. That's really terrific. That's marvelous. I think that this is a really exciting direction for Genshin. I really do. And I think that musically, I think Genshin excels when the music team is allowed to really tap into the land that they are emulating. The music of Genshin Impact really excels when it caters to and highlights different cultures and brings them together and showcases them in such a marvelous light. The mixture of classic Western orchestration mixed in with folk instruments and obviously different languages in this particular case is exceptional. And there's a lot to dig into here and a lot to explore when it comes to how different cultures use their music, use their singing, use their instruments to highlight and express themselves. And I think in this particular case, this Natlan Live Symphony performance was stellar, really stellar. It's taken me a bit of time to come around to the idea that Yupeng Chen is no longer there. And while all the talented composers that are working at Hoyomix are super valid and super worth paying attention to, Yupeng Chen was such a pivotal part of what made Genshin Impact's music so interesting to me when I started listening to it 2 years ago. And while Fontaine to me was a big step backwards in terms of what makes Genshin's music so memorable and why so many of the pieces that Yupeng Chen had composed are constantly still in my mind even to this day, I do think that this step forward really letting that team that's there now showcase their incredible use of motif and representation of different cultures. This is an exciting period, and I do hope that this continues to be the trend as we go through and explore and uncover and discover the rest of the music that is going to be meeting us and greeting us. And yeah, I'm just genuinely really thrilled for the direction this music is going to be going in. You know, the conversation about representation is an interesting one and a complex one. And I'm grateful and happy that the music of these different and diverse cultures are being focused on and highlighted in such a big way. Music is a vital part of that cultural identity, and I do think that they've done an exceptional job of highlighting those unique and interesting and diverse aspects. In any case, that was Natlan and Anthem of the Savannah. Curious to hear more. As always, thanks a ton, and I'll see you later. Bye.